Lubaina, I think we can begin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our fifth consultation on and focused on urban greening and urban greening and biodiversity. Oops, I think this is a wrong presentation. Just give me a minute, sorry. Sorry about that. I'll just share my screen again. Yeah, we're having some connectivity issues at MCGM, so sorry about all the background conversation. So yeah, I'm Lubaina Rangwala. I'm Associate Director at the WRI India Cities Program. And today I'm going to just share some of our findings on urban green cover and biodiversity alongside my colleague Ramya from the climate team. I'll quickly go because we've really lost some time. So first, I mean, I think what is important to acknowledge in the city is that we have an acute shortage of open space, right? And this is a map from the Development Plan 2034 that shows that the demand is much higher in most wards than what the supply of open spaces is. And this is based on per capita. There are some wards that actually do have almost meet the per capita demand, but very few of those, and most of these are in South Mumbai, in the island city. Probably some wards like Cave West are doing decently much better than some others, which are starkly under provided. So why is urban greening important, right? There are many co-benefits of green infrastructure, urban green cover in the city. One is the first is the importance of carbon sequestration. It provides heat resilience, flood mitigation. Green natural infrastructure also is home to many species and really sort of enhances the city's, preserves and conserves the city's biodiversity. And most importantly, also provides much needed relief of open spaces and active spaces in the city. So we're just going to go through some of the findings on all of these aspects. First, in the case of carbon sequestration, so this is a map that shows based on the tree census of 2018 that was conducted by MCGM, the sequestration potential of trees outside of forests in Mumbai is 1.35 metric tons per acre of trees per year. This amounts to 22,000 tons per year. But as you see in this map, the provision is largely, or the tree cover is richer in the suburbs than in the island city, which is highly under provisioned. And similarly, when you look at this map, which is based on satellite imagery, NDVI satellite imagery, that shows that there is definitely a deficit of urban green cover in some wards, which when correlated on the left, you see the graph, which essentially shows the proportion of green cover and gray infrastructure, buildings, concrete roads. with relationship to the land surface temperature for mean land surface temperature for each ward. You see certain wards in the inner city of Mumbai are actually very underprovided in terms of green cover. And this is an important sort of correlation to see, because sometimes when you see a lot of open spaces are provided in more kind of formally developed areas of the city, whereas many settlements or areas where low-income settlements live, there is a very poor provision both of tree cover as well as open space. The next point is that coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, wetlands, provide a much needed protection from the kind of climate risks we are seeing. Effectively, over the last 4-5 years, we've seen a surge of extreme rainfall events. There is also a surge in cyclonic activities, storms in the Arabian Sea, and our data, which my colleague will present tomorrow on flooding, shows that every time there's a storm event in the Arabian Sea, we do see an increase in tidal height and storm surge. And these ecosystems, like the mangroves, the wetlands, are really pivotal in protecting and the city's resilience, right? And what is also to be sort of noted is that mangroves also sequester carbon. So the area that we have, the area that is covered under mangroves and wetlands actually accounts for about 42,000 metric tons of carbon sequestered per year. Additionally, there is, I mean, this is the flamingo stark in showing us how important that we cohabit this city with many species, and the fact that I've been told that my internet is really unstable. If it's really unclear, can someone let
Lubaina,
me know?
you can go ahead. I think your voice is audible now. It went, okay. We lost you for a bit, but yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Lubaina, do you want to switch off your video? That should help.
That's a good point. Sure. Okay. Hope this is better. So yeah, just to basically share this, image that talks about the importance of acknowledging that we share this city with many different species, and the flamingo migration season really kind of is starkly kind of talks about the importance of the rich biodiversity that Mumbai has. And that we have actually been losing flamingo population to the loss of wetlands over the last so many years. And for the past four plus decades, we've actually seen a 71% decrease or loss of wetlands in the city to various drivers of urbanization, development to pollution. We are losing these ecosystems, and really sort of calls upon an important need to protect and allow these systems, these species to actually be able to thrive in the city and cohabit with us. Lastly, just want to show this slide, this map that talks about the access to open spaces. This is essentially a map that maps 1 kilometer radius walking distance to open spaces across the entire city. And you can see that certain areas of the city are quite well provided with open spaces, and some areas really don't have much. For example, when you actually look at the green cover for certain areas like Mankhurd, for example, the per capita, and this is based on certain numbers we quote from an recent IIT study that was conducted, that areas like Mankhurd actually have almost 32 square meters per capita green, access to or access to green cover. But in terms of access to open spaces, usable public spaces, it ranks very poorly. But when you actually look at areas like Bandra, Pali Hill, in Pali Hill, in the neighborhood, the per capita access to green cover is lesser. It's 11 square meters per capita, but the number of access to small and large open spaces is well distributed and a lot more accessible. So I think these are some of the contradictions and challenges that we need to kind of work with, right? But the city is actually engaging in quite a few ongoing initiatives. In terms of green cover, we have the recent amendment to the Tree Protection and Conservation Act, which actually protects heritage trees in the city. We are also planting almost 1.6 lakh Miyawaki trees over the next couple of years. The new garden policy is slated to convert more than 1,000 plots into inclusive open spaces. The city is also going to be forming a biodiversity committee that will look at some of these challenges and increase awareness, increase action in this space. And finally, on coastal ecosystems, I mean, the recent regulations for mangrove protection and wetland ecosystems is really welcome. There are some improvement projects that are happening along the coast as well to bring in more kind of public spaces to the city and really sort of bring in some of these protective measures. The cities also, Mumbai recently joined the Cities for Forest platform and has signed C40 cities, the urban declaration, which further kind of strengthen this commitment to conserving and protecting these natural ecosystems and really sort of managing them much better. I think with this, what our approach for this sector is essentially kind of structured around these 4 pillars. The first is scientific data, really leveraging scientific data to make decisions, integrated planning, so integrating nature-based solutions, green infrastructure as part of grey infrastructure, promoting community leadership and making sure decisions are inclusive, spaces that are designed and planned are spread across income groups in the city, as well as kind of include people's needs in specific neighborhoods. And finally, on awareness, really sort of building more awareness, sharing information, and allowing us to kind of collectively understand how we cohabit so many spaces in the city with vulnerable species. The proposed actions are broadly, and I won't really kind of go into details because I'm sure my colleagues who will join on the panel will share many targeted actions. But broadly, we will be kind of ensuring that increasing green cover is science-backed, that species are selected that actually benefit local biodiversities. We integrate nature-based solutions in grey infrastructure projects, really integrate it into the development plan through DCRs for, say, green roofs and other such measures that can be included in private plots, promoting community leadership through, citizenry, community leaders at all stages of planning and design, building community resilience capacities, and finally, the really increasing awareness through app-based campaigns, collective models for conservation and protection. So with this, I'll just conclude my presentation, and thank you all for listening, and sorry about the few technical glitches that have happened. I will now just open the panel to our colleagues who will be joining us as panelists. So we have Mr. Stalin, who's the director of the of Vanashakti, who is our first speaker, and he will talk to us about the importance of broadly the importance of natural ecosystems in the city and what can be done to protect these, and actions for the MCAP.
Thank you. Can I begin?
Yes, Stalin, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you first of all for inviting me, and it's a great initiative trying to communicate with the government. Just like you had glitches, the glitches which citizens face while communicating with MCGM are endless. So that first glitch needs to be ironed out. We never get an access, an audience or a patient hearing to any of the grievances concerning the environment. Now, when you look at Mumbai, every kind of development is looked at, but we are not looking at quality of life, happiness. The happiness quotient is absent in your development model. There are no open spaces, like you mentioned correctly. Now, wherever there were open spaces, natural forest areas, they've got locked up under the guise of security. And what is the security? For the last 10 years, 15 years, people are not allowed there, but now constructions have started in those areas. There is no attempt to stop whatever you call is going into the sea, like marine pollution. You have walls built on the sides of the rivers at the origin. There is absolutely no planning in what is being done. There is no attempt to showcase the corals of Mumbai. How many people know we have corals? Why were they not hidden? Why are they being hidden from the people? Now what is currently going on? You are burying the sandy beaches under the tetrapods. This will only hasten the erosion. There is no way we'll get to know whether the sea level rise is really taking away our shoreline. Where is it taking away? How much is going away? Nothing. We are just groping in the dark. Problem is that all the urban planning is hijacked or is in the hands of MCGM, MMRDA, many other agencies. Now, these agencies are sitting on reserve forests. They are not even handing over natural forests, preventing encroachment in these areas. These are all the natural areas which are degrading by the day. Every day you find new wetlands are being lost. The reclamation, the construction in intertidal areas, I just saw in the slide, you had mentioned Chimbai waterfront development. This so-called waterfront development is happening at the cost of blasting those rocks there and constructing inside the intertidal area. I do not know how it is going to help us. Now, we are happy and actually we are lucky we have a compassionate and honest chief minister who wants to do something for the environment. But looking forward, except for the declaration of RA as the intent to declare, even that has not been declared. 800 acres of forest which is supposed to be declared, that is still pending. Now the only wildlife habitat inside the suburban areas, which is the Powai Lake. Now there are crocodiles there. You are going to make a cycle track by dumping rocks into it. Now this is not really encouraging for us. Now if you're going to, you want to do something good for the city, you need to pause the way you're going, reflect on what was done earlier, and then how to change things. Now the MCGM needs to have its own independent panel of environmentalists or environmental experts, not anyone who's paid or is being funded by the government. That is not acceptable. You should have an independent panel which will tell you on your face that you are right or you are wrong. That is absent. Right now, you look at the tree authority. Who are the members of the tree authority? What is their connection with the biology, ecology? You need to have a proper panel in place, and this panel will see all projects and will help you. And they have to be independent. If they are dependent on you for salary or for their funding for their NGOs or whatever, it's not going to come. You are never going to talk against someone who's going to fund you. That's a basic fundamental rule we need to understand here. So this inclusive way should be that the way should be inclusive way. Everyone, including the citizens, the experts, everyone come on a platform. Nobody is going to stop a project. I'll tell you, every project can be executed. Every project. Only thing, there's a little money to be spent to preserve and execute your project. That is not being done. And that is the starting point. The willingness to spend to preserve the ecology and engage in growth. So this we need to tell them. And the local we talked about biodiversity committees. You need to have biodiversity registers for each electoral ward. We don't even know what's where. Now we are talking of, we have a city where there's so much of pollution, so much of dust in the atmosphere. What are we doing? The low-lying branches which hold the dust and soak the dust in the atmosphere, we have chopped off all of them, only on the top. So you're subjecting your citizens to a continuous barrage of dust into their lungs. Instead of that, why don't you plant shorter trees if you don't want to let the trees grow? Nothing, there is no planning. These exercises should have been done 15, 20 years ago. Never mind, you start today. That's all I would have to say. But at least talk to people. Don't cocoon yourself inside an organization and just give out. For example, let's take the latest thing about cycle track. Does anyone have a piece of document about what is going to happen in the Powai Lake? No. Under RTA, you don't get the replies. So this kind of exclusive development is not acceptable. It only creates conflict. It doesn't end up in anything positive. Nobody likes to fight. Nobody wants to fight. But for God's sake, start talking to people. And this initiative of Vatavaran, I hope that it will result in more meaningful engagement with the government. And this is what I look forward to. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Stalin, for sharing so honestly the feedback, and really hope that we can sort of integrate some of this into the plan. I think I will now move to our next panelist, Ms. Sucharita Roy from ACA, who will speak about the work that the Aga Khan Institute has been doing on urban biodiversity and ecosystems, urban ecosystems in Mumbai, and recommendations that can be integrated into the Climate Action Plan. Sucharita?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Lubaina and Vatavaran team for inviting me here. And it's a pleasure to join such a powerful medium to make some changes or some contribution to what we are all grappling with. Climate change and the reports that have come in have scared all of us. And urban greening is one of those nature-based solutions which has multiple effects. So I would just like to quickly capture some of the threats and some of the opportunities that we find from the interventions that we do. Some of the hotspots that emerge in this urban greening process only, through our studies, and then what has worked for us and how can we, have some solutioning around it. So when talking about threats, one of the threats is the intense level of concretization that is happening in Mumbai. And while I call it a threat also, I would also say that there is an opportunity there. Because of this concretization, there is this rooftops and the possibilities of vertical gardens and other kind of tools that are emerging, which are clearly, a possibility to take care of what has already happened. We cannot unconcretize anymore, but possibly we can modify it and adapt it where we require. Low income settlements in Mumbai are not very green friendly. We know that. While there is another kind of threat that emerges in the higher income group settlements, where you go in for exotic species, single species plantation, aesthetic species plantation, which clearly, destabilizes the balance between the biodiversity and the greens there, and actually is a threat to the biodiversity. I come from some of those areas and I really regret what I see, because the focus should not be to change the ecosystem. It should be to conserve the ecosystem. So that's one threat that I see which is very easy to handle. And I will be coming to some solutions that come to the mind around that. Then some of the climatic changes that we see have all been captured, but this changing cyclonic pattern is something of huge concern, because these kind of cyclones and directions that we see are changing quite over the last 2-3 years. This is something that we have to factor in. Storm surges, sea rise happening, sea level rise happening, and things like that are there. Intense precipitation we are grappling with every year, flooding and all. Urban heat island also. But this is also something that needs to be looked at, and urban greening gives an opportunity of a nature-based eco-disaster risk reduction solution. So that has to be very scientifically and technically analyzed, and we have to work that into our plans. Next is something that I have observed in Mumbai and which has clearly emerged from us, assessments on the ground, micro level and macro level, is there's a de-link between the various ecosystem services and ecosystem service providers, and also the infrastructure developers, like sanitation, water, and urban greening are so strongly connected. I think there is a need for an authority which can connect these three together. Because if you are walling up your streams, they turn into nalas. And as soon as they turn into nalas, they become the dumping yards. You have lost the buffer zones, which were the vegetation zones. Just by walling it up, you have opened it up to more squatters or more development or, whatever. And you have made such a disbalance in that small ecosystem there, that it's very difficult to retrieve. And this is something that became, which has come out very big in our micro studies. So these are some of the threats that I see, while the opportunities are, the very interesting mix of eco services that we have in Mumbai. We have the lakes, the ponds, the Sanjay Gandhi National Park as the heart of the city, the sea all around, moderating the temperature, cleaning up our airs, and we are blessed because of the sea. And though it becomes a threat now for us, the second is that developments in Mumbai are very large sized, mostly developer led, lot of land bank, which gets developed. And there is an opportunity that I see that if this development could be guided in some way, where urban greening is a compulsory part and a guided part of the development, I think we will be able to recover quite a lot of lost land or lost greens in this process. And as I said, our rooftops and our built structures are an opportunity that we need to encash on during the urban greening. And that has to be very strongly be built in. It's just not rooftop gardens, even vertical gardening and creating, smaller habitats for our birds and bees and butterflies is a great way to go ahead. Some of the hotspots that come out is that there is very little scientific data on public domain. People of Mumbai are in some ways quite informed. The internet, Google Baba, and the access to information is quite high. They have a certain level of information already. But if we can bring the data of Mumbai, like the data that you have been showing, Lubaina, and further micro data, if we can bring it on the public domain in some way, I think we will have more engagement into this process. Second is that Mumbai also has a lot of migrating population and a detached population, a population which does not relate to the environment. And hence this awareness creation and connecting these people to the environment by innovative methods. When we talk of awareness, there is a certain amount of a patriarchal approach to it that, I know better than you, and so I'm creating awareness. But we have to take them as equals and bring scientific data on, and people have that appetite in urban areas for scientific data. And that is how you engage with them. And technology offers a lot of opportunities to connect on these on equal terms with the people and the multi-stakeholders on the ground and the scientific data. So this is something that I would bring in. And I think there is a need for developing very, green, eco-sensitive greening guidelines. All of Mumbai cannot have a one plan fits all kind of a thing. And there is need to see that we have eco hotspots like the Sanjay Gandhi National Park. We have the southern Mumbai, which is exposed by the sea from all sides. So you cannot be approaching both the locations in the same way. Their needs are different. But, the Oshiwara region is a low-lying area and it's flood prone. Yeah. Whereas South Mumbai is more cyclone prone. So you need to approach it very sensitively. So eco-zoning is something that we should do. If I'm running out of time, Lubaina, just point it out.
You're kind of out of time. Yeah.
Okay. So just one more point that I wanted is that inventorizing and re-inventorizing is very needed. And this has to be also in a participatory manner. And I feel, housing societies, developers are low-hanging fruits as stakeholders, and they need to be engaged in a very different way so that those are your partners in the process. So these are some things that I wanted to bring in, and we have had successes in these kind of, by approaching it a little differently there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Thank you. These are, really good recommendations that can actually, important point is that there are places where action can be catalyzed and partnerships can be leveraged more easily. And then there are places which are highly under provisioned, and those need to be kind of taken more. We need to think about what kinds of solutions need to come in there. Also sort of differential approaches across the city. So really appreciate these points. Thank you, Sucharita. I will invite our next panelist, Ms. Shubhalaxmi, who is entomologists, and will speak about the importance of conserving urban biodiversity. What are the challenges with in terms of increasing urbanization, and how can some of these actions and recommendations enter the climate action plan to help cultivate these and preserve these biodiversities in Mumbai. So over to you, Ms. Shubhalaxmi. Are you online? Yes. Okay. You're muted, or we can't hear you for some reason. Yeah. Can you speak again? No, we can't hear you. You want to go off your headphones? Maybe that's a problem.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, you can hear you now.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
You might have to unplug your headphones from the system and just hear from your system directly, whether it's the phone or...
Am I audible?
We can hear
Lubaina?
you.
Lubaina, I can't hear you. That's why I'm asking.
You might need to unplug your headphones from your system if they're still connected.
You can hear me? Can I go on? Because I'm not able to hear anybody. Earlier, I was able to hear everyone. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see all familiar faces over here. I have a few points which I would touch upon. In fact, Stalin and Sucharita has also covered those points. So one is that we are so blessed that Mumbai, in spite of being having so many problems, we are blessed with a true biodiversity in our city. It's only that the city people are not really that much involved, except the nature lovers and wildlifers, from where we all are coming from. So there's a larger population in Mumbai who is not at all knowing what is there in Mumbai. So there is this city biodiversity index, which is, I see if you go online, you'll see only Hyderabad city has a city biodiversity index, which they prepared 10 years ago, and Mumbai doesn't have. And there are some 24 parameters in the city biodiversity index, and Mumbai rates, I would say if somebody sits and starts rating it, it'll really rate very high on all those 24 parameters. So somewhere this data is already available for our city. I think it's time that Mumbai comes up with its own city biodiversity index. And MMRD had already done an entire biodiversity survey of entire MMR region. So that data is also available, plus many research on like BNHS is there, and many other researchers are there in the city. So getting the data is not going to be a challenge. So having a city biodiversity index to showcase the biodiversity of the city is something we should be doing. And Stalin also already mentioned about the People's Biodiversity Register. Now this initiative actually came many years ago. The concept has come. In fact, every municipal corporation is supposed to have one PBR, but not much of action has happened. Recently, Panvel Municipal Corporation has taken up, somewhere even Thana Municipal Corporation had taken up the development of PBR. So this is again a doable thing. Data is already available, and it is an excellent exercise of connecting communities, connecting these people whom we are saying that they're not connected. So it's an excellent way of documenting cities' biodiversity with help of city people. Even students can be engaged into it. So the awareness automatically sets in. Rather than giving lectures and doing walks, I think let them work for biodiversity, they'll automatically learn about it. So PBR is one thing that we should, Mumbai or all cities should be having by now. And I think Sucharita already mentioned about the opportunities where like the builders, the city gardens. If you see, all ornamental plants are planted by and large. In fact, a few years back, I gave an entire list of plants to the municipal corporation here in Navi Mumbai, that if you're going to order plants, will you please order these and plant these? So that in the purpose of greening and having aesthetic appeal, plus having a biodiversity touch will be there. So it's just a matter of replacing plants, and these plants are not expensive. They're easily available. And such lists can be given to every municipal corporation. The garden department can, so you can have bird attracting, butterfly attracting. Like in the projects which we work on, we address like five Bs, like bees, butterflies, birds, and bats. for all this, for all components, we do the plantation. So it is very much doable, and it's not something really extraordinary plants. They're common plants. So having something like that, so having this list with every municipal corporation and implementation is done, that'll be great. Secondly, the tree lopping which happens before monsoon, everybody is scared for their life. That's it's logic very much, but there should be some science in the tree lopping, because trees have been lopped conveniently, and then there are tree fells happen and we blame the tree. So there should be a science behind the tree lopping, and this should be communicated to the ground workers and the builders who they have to create green zones wherever they are having constructions, the buildings are coming up. Why not, like earlier we had worked with some corporate housing, and they started having butterfly gardens in their resident areas, so having new buildings coming up with butterfly gardens, how fancy that could be. Many builders have started selling also with nature trails and butterfly gardens. Why not, it can become a policy, just not having any garden, or have a butterfly garden or a bird garden. And even this kind of data could be provided to the builder association, so that they don't have to really, because the problem with common people is that they don't know much of science with the environment part, and whatever is easily available, they follow that. So we can provide this information. In fact, the noise pollution in the city, we don't really address much about the noise pollution, but I came across a very beautiful example in where they had created, not in India of course, they had created a green barrier all along the highways, elevated walls kind of thing, like a vertical gardens kind of thing, but it's like entire climbers. So it is also absorbing heat, it is absorbing noise, and also it is a pleasant sight. So we can also have all this all along our highways, we can have these barriers which can also absorb the noise. Citizen science is a way where we can engage our local population in being participating in biodiversity documentation. iNaturalist.org or India Biodiversity portals are available, which is basically asking citizens that whatever you see around you, just take a photograph and upload it. And this is an excellent way again to engage our people in documenting their own biodiversity. Every organization like BNHS has done it, even my organization has done it. Everybody is doing in a small way, but something that comes from a top-down, if we have a top-down approach, it happens automatically. Imagine every school starts documenting it. And having biodiversity parks. We already have Sanjay Gandhi National Park, and in Navi Mumbai we have the Karnala Bird Sanctuary. If we can't create more protected areas, can we create whatever zones are there? Can we create something biodiversity zone, or give them some kind of name, so that it is people when look at it, it is not like a city park. It is something to do with environment, something to do with wildlife. In Navi Mumbai, there are so many such zones which are completely unprotected, and they're just getting eroded. And as Stalin said, that day by day these places are getting deforested. So this entire decade is called the reforestation decade of UN decade. So I think in that, whatever open areas are there, which are degraded areas are there, I think doing a reforestation within the city will be also a big support for climate change impact. And I think one more point, I think Sucharita mentioned, there is a scheme of private people who are protecting their own biodiversity on their own private land. Whether we can certify them, whether we can give certification to them. It is a very common, this practice is happening in United States, which encourages people that you protect your farmhouse, whatever acre of land you're having, if we give you a certificate for that. So this is my last point, and I'm done. Lubaina.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I mean, this is, yeah, absolutely very, very important suggestions. And I guess you can't hear us. Maybe you can put your earphones back again. Yeah, now you can hear us, right? Okay, thank you so much, Shubhalaxmi. This was really very very powerful suggestions, and how in terms of how to also sort of encourage awareness and public participation in a lot of these activities. So I think I'll just go to our next speaker. We have Samarth Das, who also represents the PK Das Associates Samarth will speak about the Samarth has been part of PK Associates have been part of the Open Mumbai Plan and a lot of documentation, and have been involved in building open spaces in many parts of the city. So I think broadly, Samarth, we'd like you to sort of talk about the importance of integrating nature-based solutions in recreational open spaces, and recommendations then broadly on the climate action plan that you think from an open space provision, what could be possible co-benefits and alignments between these. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Lubaina. Thank you, the Vatavaran team. I'm humbled to be here on this panel with some stalwarts of the biodiversity field. I will try and make a kind of subtle contribution to this group, of course, but lend my perspective as an urban designer and planner to get some of these kind of more tangible, ideas across, to incorporate many of the ideas that the speakers before me have already spoken. So I'll just kind of start with a very short background and then a few action points that I've kind of listed off. So as mentioned in the NCAP draft concept note about green cover, of course, Mumbai might have a very low percentage, as low as 12% of its landmass under green cover, but it has a vast plethora of natural assets, which cover almost 150 square kilometers, nothing less than 150 square kilometers. That's almost 32% of our landmass. And the potential of this natural asset is completely untapped from a point of view of public interaction, public awareness, and public integration point of view. So, these natural assets, as mentioned before, include lakes, ponds, creeks, rivers, nallas, hills, wetlands, mangroves, beaches, and even a national park, for crying out loud, within our city. The Open Mumbai exhibition that our office put up back in 2012, in fact, began with the production of the first ever open spaces map of Mumbai, which we did as a mapping project. And these certainly revealed many of these stunning figures that we have in front of us today. Through the last 40 years of our practice, we've always contributed towards the idea of reclaiming open spaces from the clutches of corruption and builders and abuse, protecting them, and then furthering and expanding these open spaces into public spaces in the city. Our agenda through these public spaces projects have been mainly to dismantle the barriers and unify city fragments in an effort toward achievement of a sustainable ecology of cities. As cities are expanding, the open spaces are certainly shrinking. How can we, as planners, as policymakers, turn our cities' neglected backyards, which most of our natural assets are, by the way, into proud cultural forecourts? The effort of the Open Mumbai plan was to re-envision our city with open spaces at the heart of city planning. It aimed to create a network of open spaces, tapping into the vast natural assets within our city limits by ways of walking, cycling tracks, with places for rest and pause amidst these natural areas. A plan that aimed to create non-barricaded, non-exclusive, non-elitist spaces that provided access for all and leisure for all. A plan that ensured that open space is not simply available on a map, but is geographically and culturally integral to neighborhoods and thereby a participatory city life. This exhibition held at NGMA and subsequently at Nehru Center for almost 2 years back in 2012. So incredible participation across people from all across the city, as well as political parties and bureaucrats. And some of the learnings that we have had across our public spaces projects is that for any successful project in the city, there are certain key principles. For us, there are namely 3. The first one is urban planning and design is a right. It's a right of the common people of the society, of the city, and must be an integral part of any design process, not just peripheral, not just through peripheral stakeholder consultations, but also follow-ups to ensure that this public dialogue is in fact integrated into the planning process. The second idea is to demonstrate change through participatory endeavors at a local neighborhood scale. Okay, the minute we start talking about master plans, it's very alienating to common people. No one understands what the idea of a master plan is. But if you show and demonstrate change at a very local neighborhood level, even the small child in the neighborhood will appreciate and understand what the impact of that change is. And finally, scale up those local neighborhood level initiatives to the scale of the city in order to influence citywide transformative change. So these are three guiding principles. I'll just briefly talk about one of our Open Mumbai projects to illustrate some of these principles. That's the Irla Nala Reinvigoration Project. You know, there are 300 kilometers of nallas in Mumbai city. How many of us know that there are 300 kilometers of nallas in Mumbai city? As per the 2006 Chitle Committee report, 6 meters on either side of the nalla are to be cleared and kept open for MCGM utility vehicles for the desiltation process once in a year, correct? Our argument was that since the desiltation activity is only for 5 to 10 days of the year, can we look at the other 350 days of the year to be opened up to the public and capture these spaces into the public realm? The beauty of these nallas, geographically speaking, is that since they were original water channels for dissipation of stormwater from inland areas, they naturally weave through neighborhoods in the city, right? So now imagine a stream of public spaces within neighborhoods that are accessible within a 5-10 minute walk from any point in the city, right? So if you look at two sides of 300 kilometers of nallas, you're looking at 600 kilometers of walking and cycling tracks that are landscaped and lit within the city's urban fabric. Okay, the Irla Nala Reinvigoration Project, started in 2014, is a project promoted by the citizens of Juhu, along with the undeterred monetary support of MP-led funds from Javed Akhtar and the active participation of local MLAs and corporators. The pilot project took up a length of 1.2 kilometers of the Nala, where today walking and cycling tracks are completed, lighting and landscaping has been completed. In 2017, the then Municipal Commissioner Ajoy Mehta had given the clearance for a water filtration unit in order to treat the dirty water. Unfortunately, nallas have been transformed into these open sewage systems, unfortunately, even though they're stormwater drains. But these, just last point. Yeah, just the last point. Through this project, we're advocating promotion of long, thin, skinny parks instead of large, chunky central parks that people need to drive to go to access, right? So the last point is that by way of promoting urban forests along these streams of open spaces, you're not trying to find new land to plant forests. This is already a public space which is under the city's jurisdiction. Plant these areas with green cover, improve urban forests, and by way of doing this, improve public vigilance and thereby the protection of these natural assets. Yeah. Sorry, I just went over a little bit, but just a few points that I wanted. Yeah.
Just in time. So thank you so much, Samarth. This has been and also really good refresher to remember some of the important aspects of the Open Mumbai exhibition and what has happened after, in all these years. So thanks so much. I want to next bring in Mr. Pradeep Tripathi to talk about, he's the founder and executive director of Green Yatra, to talk about how, we hear a lot about Miyawaki plantations, and the government is really sort of, promoting this method. What are some pros and cons of it, and how can we do this in a manner that it actually is science-based and promotes soil health? It allows species,
Thank you, Lubaina and Vatavaran, to invite me to in this forum. And definitely, I agree with in the certain points, in the lots of points with the Shubhalaxmi and Stalin, sir. First is the important thing. See, we have to preserve and conserve what we have before going ahead, with the plan. But definitely, we have lots of green cover. Coming on, if you want to increase the green cover and biodiversity. So I think there is no need to work on especially in one project like a biodiversity, because native trees, native green cover, and the biodiversity is a two sides of a single coin. So whenever we see and we say that almost in the Mumbai, almost 50-60% data we have received through the newspaper and all news, trees are non-native. So my suggestion will be, whenever we are going now, so there will be a strict rule to plant only native trees, native only. It is possible. I will request the government authorities to ban the exotic plants at all. We don't need all these plants, because in the recently South Tufan, we have seen the trees we've fallen down were the non-native species, and they are not good. जैसे होता है ना, हर पीली चीज सोना नहीं होती, उसी तरह हर tree environment के लिए अच्छा नहीं होता है. So it's very important to go only for the native, and native will be local. I will, point out, the many things like, and when do the plantation, so it's not only native, it should be local native with the proper forest survey. If I want to bring the biodiversity, it should be proper forest survey and proper ecological R&D. Where even in the Mumbai, there is a many zone, coastal zone inside the city. So there will be different tree species must be planted. It's not all data. Even so, I will come on the more points. Why only native species, and when we planting the native species, what I have seen, there is just, 4, 5, 10 species, and again, year and year, we are repeating the same. So what we do when we do the plantation, each and every year, we drop 10 to 15% of species and we come up with the new species. Because even in Sanjay Gandhi National Park itself, we have almost, thousands of different native species. So you won't have to go anywhere. Even Shubhalaxmi ma'am said she have already submitted the native species data. We do the intensive forest survey before doing any Miyawaki plantation. So we will, we can also share that kind of, species. Then developing many green spaces required, because I will come on the Miyawaki, how we can do that. So if you want to increase the green cover, it is a very important, wherever we get the open space, we can create a small cluster, like school, college, housing society, residential complex. If I talk about the builders, I get lots of call, I want to do the Miyawaki plantation, but I never heard back after that call. Means there should be strict policy what we are planting, because it will be the same after 10 to 15 years. जैसे हमने जो गलत पेड़ लगाए थे, we are facing the music now, and after that now people are creating anything in the name of Miyawaki without R&D, without scientific approach, without the forest survey. As per the Miyawaki law, you should never plant a sapling without the forest survey, and I think there is a very few people who do the forest survey. We can bring the nursery से उठा के लाना sapling, but you don't know the distribution. So it's not, pick up from the book from the internet and just do the plantation. So it's a very technical and serious method. So it must be followed the same. I have seen the people who are doing even the municipal. So I see the same list. So I will again repeat that in each and every places, do the rotation. Rotation is a very important, so we can bring more and more native species. And we can also do the same kind of, each and everywhere we can change. Then right place, right tree and right place. There is a certain species which we should not plant near the schools. We should not plant near the hospitals. So we should also keep that in the mind. These are the very small, thing, but we have to keep in our mind. Now coming back to the biodiversity. So if we do the native trees, there is no need to work on the biodiversity. It will bring it back. So as we had discussed already the lots of issues, so how to bring back. So when you do the native species, there is a lots of biodiversity, it will come. If I will like to mention, so I will mention 2 species how biodiversity come with the right native tree. If we go for the red silk cotton, this single tree can attract 81 different bird species. Then another tree, we call it the bird magnet, like Palash, fire of flame. It can attract almost 94 different bird species. Then Sagwan, the Tectona grandis teak. It provide and associated with the almost 174 different insects, which is very important for our biodiversity. So if you are bringing and planting the right tree species, then definitely the biodiversity will be in our city. And we have to put more effort to bring the biodiversity to maintain it, because I have seen there is a lots of chemical are being used to protect the trees from the different kinds of diseases. So go natural based, never use any kind of chemical. We as a Green Yatra successfully in last 10 years, we never use any kind of chemical fertilizer, nutrients. We are going only the natural based method, and we have faced we haven't faced any problem so far. If I talk about the Jeevamrit, Ghan Jeevamrit, people can reach out to us time to time. We keep sharing such kind of session where we can give the information. We must be the chemical free and nature based plantation. then we need some special space for our biodiversity. Suppose developing the green space like dumping yard. We have a lots of dumping yard. We can convert in a biodiversity park to them because they are not good for any kind of construction. If we see in the housing society, school, colleges, there we can create a small cluster, 100, 200 trees, tiny Miyawaki forest कर सकते हैं, tree cluster कर सकते हैं, botanical species कर सकते हैं. We can do the Pancharatna, all season fruit forest. We can also create our own tree bank because there is a lots of species which are endangered in their natural habitats. So we can create a tree bank in these kind of forest. Like, we can also use the different kinds of method like, Triveni, Pancharatna, Nakshatra garden, and how to achieve that goal.
Request you to please continue.
Yeah, definitely. So we can do the Miyawaki plantation. We can do the trench plantation. We can go for the Devrai, One Rai. So there is a lots of things can be done in your doorstep, in the backyard, your school, college, housing society, and it must be strictly follow. One more suggestion I will let to give in the end. जैसे एक independent body होनी चाहिए. ये is Stalin sir suggested. In the tree, they shouldn't be the part of the BMC government organization. They not be funded by the government organization. They must not be working with the government organization. They must be independent. They can give fair opinion, what is right, what is wrong, and that must be followed by. So there will be kind of committee, independent committees required because there is a lots of mess happening in the name of Miyawaki plantation and tree plantation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has actually been very useful to, in terms of even recommendations of how to put in the right checks and balances as we increase, seek to increase the city's green cover. Invite Mr. Debi Goenka to as our last speaker today. Debi will share some of the work that they've been doing for decades now in protecting the city's natural infrastructure and what could be ways forward in terms of regulations, in terms of the right protection measures as part of the Mumbai Climate Action Plan.
Thanks, Lubaina. If you will look at the chat box, I've already posted all my suggestions in the chat box, and these are very specific suggestions for the BMC. And I'm glad Mr. Pardeshi is here and is listening in. So I think it is important that all the mangrove, mudflats, sand dunes, etc., should be delineated in the development plan sheets. And in the case of mangroves, even the 15-meter buffer zone should be delineated in the development plan sheets. The same thing for all the forest areas, national parks, deemed forests, sanctuaries, eco-sensitive zone. They have to be clearly marked on the DP sheets so that when the BMC is giving permissions, they know exactly what is happening on the ground. Same thing for the high tide line and low tide line. These should be marked in the DP sheets. The fourth point is already been made by other participants and speakers, but plant only local trees, indigenous trees, and preferably broadleaf trees that can absorb pollution and dust. And wherever tree plantation is being carried out on plots, it should be multi-layered. There should be trees, there should be bushes and shrubs, there should be grasses and also creepers, not just a monoculture plantation. This is a special request to Mr. Pardeshi. When you are giving permission for pruning of trees, please make sure that the trees are not being indiscriminately hacked and beheaded, as has happened several times in areas where I have frequented. And despite frequent complaints, this process is still going on. The contractor is interested in cutting the maximum number of branches so that he gets the maximum amount of wood. And in the process, the trees also get unbalanced and then will topple over and are very vulnerable to falling over during strong winds and so on. My other point is about Miyawaki plantation. They should be carried out only on plots that are not accessible to the public in Mumbai city, because if you do Miyawaki plantations in playgrounds and recreational spaces, that much space gets blocked for use by the Mumbaikars, and that space is already in short supply. So if you want to do, say, Miyawaki plantation in the BARC complex, which is anyway restricted entry, or in Raj Bhavan where public can't enter anyway, those kind of areas are more suitable for Miyawaki plantation than a playground or a recreation ground. The other thing is we have been successful in protecting a very large area of mangrove throughout the state of Maharashtra, thanks to the High Court PIL. But mangrove areas are generally not accessible to the public because by the nature of the terrain, it's not possible for people to access them. So maybe the Forest Department and the BMC could selectively build boardwalks in some portion of the mangrove so that the public can have access to the mangrove areas. And the boardwalk obviously will have to be constructed without destroying mangrove or without blocking the tidal water flow. The next point has already been made, but I think all beaches have to be kept free of all construction activity in any form. And building seawalls and putting tetrapods and so on is a surefire method of destroying a beach, and particularly beaches where turtles have been known to nest. That should completely not be allowed. Of course, we all know that cleanliness and maintenance of green spaces is pathetic, and this really needs to be improved. Otherwise, people are not going to use the green spaces, and the green spaces then become dumping grounds. Because of climate change considerations, I think it is important to make the, some spaces available which will actually help cool down the temperature and so on. And maybe along pavements or some kind of thing, there should be a niche or some kind of greenery that will help reduce the temperature and help people and help actually make the city heat wave proof to some extent. Most importantly, our hills also need to be protected, and the so-called permissions given for constructing building on hills should be stopped, because under this permission, large-scale quarrying activities go on. And a couple of points more: our creeks and rivers should not be concretized. Calling them nalas is an insult to all the rivers and creeks. And what is actually happening is we are converting our rivers and creeks into sewage channels. And by concretizing the banks of the creeks and so on, which is what is happening in the Brimstone project, we're stopping the flow of seawater into the mangroves, and then the mangroves die, slum colonies come up, and after that SRA projects come up in areas which actually had mangroves. So all these kind of activities need to be stopped. And one more suggestion to Mr. Pardeshi, just like we have Aadhaar cards for human beings, we should have Chadar cards for all the trees in the municipal area. That would help make sure that the trees that we have don't get cut or don't vanish. And we have a proper record of when the tree was planted, what species it is, etc. So that the age factor is known. We can plan for replacing the trees when they reach the end of the natural life cycle. That would actually help a lot, I think, in maintaining a green cover. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debi. These are some really good suggestions, and we are 5 minutes over time. We started actually quite a few minutes late, and so we're a little over time. But I do want to kind of, one is thank you all for the feedback. I mean, some of these are really very valuable recommendations that we really hope to include into the plan. This is also just to say that this is the sort of start of many of these conversations along these action tracks. So we do want to kind of continue to engage, and we'll figure out what the modalities of some of this are with BMC. I've been seeing a lot of questions and great recommendations on the chat, and we assure you that we will be recording and integrating that into a final kind of a list of recommendations that will go to the various departments. But do also please put in some feedback that may have not been included in this conversation today. Do put in your feedback on the Mumbai Climate Action Plan website as well, so that we can continue to keep hearing from you all and seeing how to reflect better. A lot of what we showed, a lot of what we've shown as our analysis are there are many data gaps, and we acknowledge that, because this has largely been done based on a lot of formal sources of data that we have. And so if there are studies, if there are research pieces that that show a different side of what we've presented, please do share that with us on the website, and we'll really want to kind of think about different ways of addressing this small parts of a larger vulnerability assessment that was conducted as part of the Mumbai Climate Action Plan analysis. There were two forms of assessment, right? We did a greenhouse gas inventory, and we've also done a vulnerability assessment. It's not a study, it's part of the plan process, and we have been showing certain parts of it. We've been getting a lot of questions on in terms of feedback. Vatavaran has been getting a lot of questions. So just want to say that we will incrementally, as we assimilate this feedback, as we look at other forms of data that in a span of a month, and this is an ongoing process. So we are not in the position to share anything at this point.
Lubaina, your voice is breaking.
Because it's all in draft mode. So just with this, I just want to thank all the panelists today for sharing these great recommendations, and sorry, I'll just put off my video. Hopefully this is better. I just want to now thank Mr. Pardeshi also for being here. And issue of green infrastructure and biodiversity is really not an easy subject to manage, because the kind of, can you hear me better? Okay. Video I put off. Yeah, this is not an easy subject, definitely, with the kind of pressures that we see.
I welcome all suggestions and demand in today's panel discussion. Some of the suggestions are really very good and can be implemented. I assure you that in coming years, we will definitely take all measures that are necessary for conservation of biodiversity.
Challenges that we see in the city. I really want to thank BMC and Mr. Pardeshi to be here, and he will share some final concluding remarks. So, yeah.
First of all, thank you all for today's discussion. All the panelists, participants, I wish to express thanks from the behalf of BMC and Gardens Department for your valuable insights and suggestions. We also want to thank WRI India, Vatavaran and Climate Voices for their views and conducting today's session. And we'll definitely take today's feedback and all your views for our further planning and all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I guess we can close now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
1 minute.
Thank you.